The only thing that separates women of color from anyone else is opportunity. You cannot win an Emmy for roles that are simply not there.
I am here today to tell you that my name is Aisha Ali. I am the daughter of Donald Trump.
Are you married, single, gay, straight, bi, gender fluid, gender neutral, undisclosed, still discovering, or prefer not to say?
I'm sorry, I think I fell asleep while you were asking me that question.
Do you have greater ambitions by making this announcement?
My only ambition is to tell the truth. The truth is what I'm putting out there. That's my ambition. In terms of political aspirations, no. The only aspiration I have is the sweat that comes out of my body. That's how I aspire.
How many terrorists are in your family?
I have no terrorists in my family.
But you were counting. What?
Oh, I'm sorry. There are no terrorists in my Pakistani family, but there are at least 3 terrorists on my Trump side.
And I don't think it's just my Asia. I think it's your Asia too, right? It's all of ours. And I wish my phone voice could be my all-the-time voice. What's wrong with eating the groceries while you shop for them? And I don't care what anyone says. I love Anne Hathaway.
Right, me too. I actually love her in Princess Diaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Shondaland, our shows look like how the world looks. Everyone can see themselves when they turn on the TV on Thursday nights on ABC. To me, that was not some difficult, brave, special decision I made. It was a human one, because I am a human. It wasn't something we had to bravely fight for, because ABC is also full of humans. This is not the Jim Crow South. We're not ignorant, so why wouldn't we do that? I still can't believe I get asked about it all the time, as if being normal, TV looking like the normal world, is an innovation.
I don't see a problem. This could be awesome. I'm in a new place with my best friends. Caggers will be in Jam's room. Sounds like a non-stop slumber party. You know, Oprah says a breakup can be a breakthrough. I am gonna find my way back to fabulous. I am gonna be brave and dream big. I'm gonna shine my light from the outside in. And the best part is, I have a partner in crime. Jam hasn't had a date since the Beijing Olympics. And if she can do it, so can I. All the single ladies, all the single ladies, all the single ladies. Oh,
We want to tell you a classic timeless story.
Juicy. You forgot to say juicy.
Boy meets girl,
Good falls for boy.
girl gets dumped.
But what about happily ever after? What about it?
If me cooking chapatis in a sari for 3 spoiled brats and an ungrateful husband who never takes me for movies is happily ever after, then you call me Cinderella.
Cinderella.
Okay, chalo, let's get to it.
Come on. I know. I keep up with the Kardashian.
Wedding cancellation postcards.
I am not ready for the broken heart icon.
Inclusion is an emotional word. We all know how it feels to be excluded and included. Just to be a woman or a person of color. And so if you expand that in a larger cultural context and you think of whole groups of people that have been excluded, then the idea of diversity, which is just, look, a belonging, everyone belongs here, everyone is valuable, starts to make more sense to me. Yeah, so inclusion is a word that I embrace.
He's not the one that you should be worried about. Me, on the other hand,
I had to choose something for myself.
I am sorry I fell for someone.
Oh, Daddy, put it in my cap.
We have this history of strength and resilience and creativity that we can draw on and innovate from.
Open TV is growing slowly with our artists.
I build architectural models in the daytime and community at night.
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch, but it's not far off the mark. I didn't need your little lesbian drama ruining things any more than it already had. You are so lucky I haven't told Mary.
Wait, I think that place is supposed to be like a new vintage sneakers place.
See, now that I'd go to.
Look, I know what's going on. What? I'm setting you up with my aunt.
It's interesting to think about. There's probably so many people that are capable of incredible things that just don't get the opportunity. I always say, if I didn't write Master of None, no one would have given me this part.
That's
Like,
true.
if that was just a script that was out there, they'd be like, well, no, he can't do it, he just...
It's an incredible time for writers and independent producers to break through with new projects. The industry, now more than ever, is open to unique voices, diverse voices, and great stories that will captivate an audience. The NYTVF is an opportunity to be seen by digital and television buyers, as well as agents and managers.
The NYTVF has two flagship initiatives, the Independent Pilot Competition, or IPC, and NYTVF Scripts. The IPC really welcomes anything you consider television.
With the expansion of NYTVF Scripts, we're also excited to add a dedicated day for TV writing at the festival.
Be weird, be adventurous, be yourself. Make television that you want to see.
And submit to the NYTVF.
Because new TV is discovered here.
You know, we have to work without permission, especially as women in this industry. Who are we asking for permission to do what we want to do? That should be eradicated. You need to set a path and start walking. And that is what I've tried to do and what I try to encourage folks to do. Walk with me, let me walk with you, let's walk with each other. But I think, you know, so much of the industry is very permission-based. And once you get out of your mind that you have to ask anyone to do what you want to do, you'll be better for it.
Thank you. Wow, this is awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Pooja Mohindra, and I'm the writer-creator of the comedic web series Friendly Confines, which you can find on YouTube, and Geeta's Guide to Moving On, which will be released later this year at youtube.com/ChicagoPooja. And before we get started, I just want to take a moment. Well, first of all, I want you guys to get to know one another. Turn to the person next to you, introduce yourselves, and tell them, let's start with this. Hi, my name is, and I'm a human. Let's do it. Everyone a friend? Okay, cool. I want to take a moment before we dive in to thank South by Southwest, the festival, the entire staff, all the volunteers, with a special shout out to Laura Seaton, Katie McCall, and the tech support team at South by Southwest. They've been incredibly helpful, and I'm so grateful to them for creating a safe and supportive space to have an honest and brave conversation about diversity and inclusion. And so thank you to the festival for giving us this opportunity to engage in this dialogue. I can't think of a more important, relevant, and critical time in American history to be having this conversation. So thank you for being here and engaging in this with engaging in that with us. I know that the panel is called YouTube So Brown, Diversity in Digital Storytelling, but when we talk about diversity and inclusion today, we're talking about it from all angles, across lines of gender, sexuality, race, color, age, all the communities that are less visible or invisible on the stage and screen. So there will be also a time for question and answer. I invite you to get and take any mental notes or actual physical notes, and we can include that later on. Our panelists, as you can see today, are so incredibly talented, and I'm so grateful for them to be here today with us. And they have dedicated their work to making diversity and storytelling a more inclusive space. The stories that they've added to the landscape, as you can see from today, it's just incredible that they're voices that we wouldn't otherwise be engaged with. So I thank them for the work that they're doing, and I want to introduce them to you. We've got Amar Jean Christian, the founder of Open TV, based out of Chicago. Fazia Mirza, who is a writer, producer, and actor, and she actually has her feature film debut, Signature Move, here at the festival. It will be screening tonight, actually, and it just premiered this weekend. So congratulations, Fazia. She's also from Chicago. And Ian Thake of the New York Television Festival, based out of New York. Thank you, Ian, for being here. And as we launch in this conversation, you know, diversity, it just becomes like this, sometimes this topic, like the word. And so I encourage us to be honest, be brave, be messy, be imperfect. It's okay to be uncomfortable or comfortable, but let's get more comfortable with talking about this issue. I want to start with them introducing themselves. What do you guys do? What are you working on? And why is this topic relevant to your artistic mission?
Yes, so I come to this as a professor of communication studies at Northwestern. I've been researching television for now almost 10 years, and I'm interested in how the web sort of allows different voices to come in, as the NYTVF trailer said. So in my book that's coming out later this year, Open TV, Innovation Beyond Hollywood and the Rise of Web Television, I talk about how by changing the development process, the web really allowed new voices to come in and for independent creators to reach their audiences. So I'm interested in the intersection between media, technology, and culture, and how it reshapes industry practices. So Open TV is a study in television development. How do we distribute identities differently? When we talk about diversity, we talk a lot about production, but I think we need to talk about systems for distribution and development, right? Getting funds and marketing support for these kinds of creators.
My answer is not quite as smart. I love you, Amar. So yeah, my name is Fazia Mirza, and I used to be doing something other than acting, and I started acting, and I was sort of getting tired of waiting to be cast. I was, it's like the classic story now, which is kind of funny. I was tired of waiting to be cast. I didn't see people that looked like me. I openly identify as Pakistani, Muslim, lesbian, female. And I was like, well, I don't even see one segment of my identity well represented, much less all the intersections at one time. So instead of waiting for someone else to tell my story, I thought, well, here's this digital YouTube thing. Why don't we do something? So I just started writing. I feel like I became a writer out of necessity. And started with a short film and a web series, Cam Kardashian, about the long-lost lesbian Kardashian sister, whom I play. You can see the resemblance. Well, that and Eric Estrada. But so I started doing that, and and then it kind of just became, why stop? Let's keep doing. And so, now my mission as an artist is to break down stereotypes using comedy as a tool to talk about really divisive topics, comedy and satire. And the feature, it's my first feature that I co-wrote, and I star in it. It's world premiered I don't even know what day it is, 2 days ago, Saturday, and it's tonight, and I'll tell you all about it, don't worry. I have stickers and postcards. Please come.
They will all be there.
Yep. Should I go? Sorry.
Yes,
It's Ian.
Hi, I'm Ian. I apologize for wearing the same shirt in the video that I'm wearing now. I swear I have more than one shirt.
I have
a diverse range of shirts. Many polka dotted, but not all navy. I work with the New York Television Festival, which I think from its start was sort of trying to find avenues to TV for underrepresented groups of people. I think that started for just people who didn't have access to sort of the TV space due to sort of the closed off nature that TV can sort of foster. And then that has sort of grown, and delightfully so, to sort of try to be a space for more underrepresented groups of people. It's a learning process. It's something we're working towards. Personally, I think I for the first, 25 years of my life, I think I was trying to be as white as possible. So it's sort of nice to embrace the other side of it, and realize that there's these stories to be told, and that there's sort of this beautiful basket of culture that we get to pull from, and it's ridiculous to sort of only be telling stories from one group of people. So that's what I come at it from.
Cool. So we're a very informal group here, as you can see. So what I want to ask is, I mentioned earlier that sometimes people get uncomfortable around this topic, or it becomes a difficult topic to talk about. I think it's complex and very layered. And what I think is that even diversity, the reason why I think people sometimes feel uncomfortable talking about it is because I've heard the criticism from that it's divisive. I actually think that when we share stories that are from underrepresented communities, they actually point to our common humanity. And that's why I kind of started with, hi, I'm Pooja and I'm a human. So can you share with me how you feel that diverse storytelling does that? How does it foster empathy? And point to our common humanity.
I love that both of my lovely co-panelists are like, Fazia, you should do this one. Look, I mean, being a Muslim lesbian, half the time when that started, people are like, that is not possible. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm not a hologram. So it's possible, because here I am, being all the gay and all the Muslim, and leave me alone, And so I think just sort of, I don't think that I necessarily seek out to make political work, but by nature of the fact that I claim all these identities, I guess it's inherently political to many people. And I think that by creating this content, for me, it's both a private conversation that's happening very publicly, a way that I'm reconciling, but also I feel like the way we move in the world and what we create in the world is a way of creating empathy and conversation and connection. So, one of my missions is okay, well, I see it as my job not just to tell my authentic story, but any community whose story I'm also telling in a narrative or some sort of doc piece. It's that is also authentic. And whether it's, oh, well, I'm going to put all brown people on screen. We may not talk about it, but then you get used to seeing this thing, right? I mean, I guess it's almost I don't think of it as branding, but the more you get used to seeing an image, the more you're just yeah, that's normal. Or if we're putting queer characters on screen, it's okay, well, two women are together. That's just a normal relationship. That's just a regular relationship. And I think the more we connect, and I find comedy a really great way to connect, because let's all face it, laughter is all the same. It's not wait, what did they say when they laughed? That was weird. You know what I mean? It's just sort of like we get it. So yeah, that to me, that's like a basic answer. I think it's essential, and the kinds of conversations you can have with someone once you're laughing with them, it's a whole other playing field. And I also don't think when we think about people like, well, how are we going to change the world? And I'm like, holy fuck, we're trying to change the world? That sounds really hard, right? Yeah. Right? I mean, but that's the goal. The goal is change the world, but I don't know if we can, that's really daunting, but if we can be like, wait a minute, I just need to connect with someone. And so if we can communicate with them through comedy or communicate with them by being like, oh yeah, I've met a Muslim person before who wasn't a terrorist. They were also a lesbian, and actually, they did wear a lot of denim, but it was fine. Like, you know what I mean? It's just sort of creating a different story. Yeah, I could talk about this all day. Go on.
You know, for Open TV, I thought when I originally did this that I would get a lot of sort of inhuman stories, just because I was working with artists who were performance artists and sort of really radical. But what I found is that almost everything we've released has had some kind of quote unquote universal aspect, which I hate because like no experience is universal, except things like, I mean, I guess like there's love, right, and family, supposedly. Most people have some connection to that.
Death.
Death is definitely universal. That's pretty much the only thing that's universal.
It's coming for all of us, and we can't stop it.
We started dying the day we came out of that womb.
There needs to be more death in this movie, actually. But you know, we do screenings in Chicago, and I don't know about empathy, but I do know that all kinds of people come out to our screenings. If it's a Latinx screening, it's not all Latinx people there, right? If it's a black person screening, it's not all black people there. And I have to think that there is some kind of understanding that's being formed. I will also say that for us, it's really important to have not just screenings, but also panels or performance or other modes of artistic engagement, just so people can be in space with one another and actually like meet someone who might be different from them. Because I think even as we're in a very mediated world, like tangible experiences are also incredibly important for forging those connections.
Yeah, just to pile on, I think there's like, I'm gonna really date this conversation, but there's a fear that like you're not woke enough, like at any period of time, that you're like afraid that like you're gonna say the wrong thing, or you know, it's less like not being open to stories and less like, oh no, what if I misgender this person? And I think one thing that TV and really any sort of artistic medium allows is to have those sort of open streams of conversation. You know, you can sort of start the conversation at a point of connectivity and then figure out where, you know, you need to go. I think, you know, we've all been sort of learning about lots of different things over time, and different people come, like nobody has all the answers, but TV sort of allows that space where, you know, you can start having that conversation. I mean, just to go super far back, just like Ellen, I think like was sort of a big moment where like suddenly like gay character on TV, we got to like see that as a nation, and people were talking about it, and it got a little cartoony, but it was still really exciting. And then, you know, then she was blackballed, but then she came back, but it was all great. But you know, but just having that sort of like start of a conversation that like nothing else could have brought that about. Like for some reason TV was the medium to get that out there. And now we're sort of starting to see that, or not starting to, we're seeing it a lot in the digital space, because you don't really need permission to put things out. So you can start the conversation just by uploading a video. That doesn't necessarily have to be your end goal. You could just want to be making something fun with your friends, but there is that sort of underlying aspect of just having like a comfortable space to start a conversation.
Well, and it's empowering, right? Like, I mean, we all have these dreams of, you know, I want, like, who doesn't want that show? Like, you know, I'm like, okay, what's my dream? Well, a combination of Shonda Rhimes and Issa Rae. Like that, like that's the dream, right? But it's like, I don't know if that's possible, but now that we have this capacity to make something, and no one can tell us that we can't. You can't, we can make it, we can put it up there, whether you get 5 views or 5 million views, you made it. Right? I mean, and that, there's something really fucking beautiful about that. Sorry, I keep swearing.
Is there a language?
Is there a language
Are we getting
bar?
an explicit rating for this?
It was my
Free
birthday
speech.
Saturday. Free speech.
That's great, because I wanted to touch on the fact that the digital space has democratized storytelling. And I'm assuming, I mean, raise your hand if you're somebody that tells stories in this room, that writes, produces,
Snapchats.
a YouTuber. So I wanted to throw out to them, you know, like, why the digital space? What are the challenges? I mean, we're talking right now about some of the rewards of it. That's anybody can throw a story up online. What are the challenges with it? What are the risks to it? And what is your advice for the people on concrete ways of people here that are trying to create and tell their stories from your experiences that you can draw from?
That's everything.
Because it's not easy. It's not easy. It sounds easy.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Just post it on YouTube. It's not that easy.
Right.
I mean, you know, Fazia can speak more specifically to these challenges, but like, you know, there's challenges from production through marketing, right? In production, it's money and resources. Once you're done with the piece, if you've actually managed to complete something, the challenge is then how do you get people to see it, right? Marketing is a huge thing, and you know, when I interviewed over 100 web series creators for my book, and everyone could tell a story, no one could get anyone to see the thing.
Why?
Well, there's so many platforms, and we're deluged with content. You know, probably well over 100 hours of videos uploaded to YouTube every single minute these days, plus Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and Vimeo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, when you read interviews with like Felicia Day, who made history with the Guild in so many ways, you know, she spent more time on Twitter trying to get people to watch the show than she did making the show. You know, that's the same with everyone who's been successful. Issa Rae had like Twitter and a Tumblr and a blog, right? And like all these other things. So I think, you know, what we need now are distributors who can aggregate audiences and not only direct funding for production, but more often just make marketing a little bit easier for creators, because it's great to have all these stories, but I think people need to see them ultimately for those conversations to proliferate.
Fazia, how do you get people to see your stuff? We just saw.
I don't know. You know, I mean, I think it's fascinating. Like, I mean, I'm sure there are people in this room. I mean, and I just want to say that, you know, when you asked, Pooja asked, like, who's a storyteller in this room, some people raised the hand. I would say that every single person could have raised their hand, right? Because, like, we're all telling stories every single day. Like, anytime you're like, oh my God, guess what just happened to me? Oh my God. Like, you just told a story, and we enjoy that, right? We enjoy that sharing or receiving of information and love and connection. It's connection. So I think y'all are doing it already, but it's, I guess, who's putting it out there in this other digital space. I don't have the answer, and I bet some of you have had way more views on your stuff than I have ever had. But for me, it was something I could do and control, that I could just make it and put it out there, and I needed to. I just needed to. And it was an experiment. And for me, it was more about, you know, dealing with what I was going through and wanting to create the content and give myself a platform. And then suddenly I had a body of work, right? And so it's like, I guess, like suddenly I had a portfolio. When people are like, well, what have you done? It didn't matter if I wasn't like cast in that great big show. I was like, look at these, you know, 30 videos I made. You can see something, right? And whether it was getting a review here, getting a review there, compiling it and putting it together. I mean, the Muslim Trump that you saw, some of you probably are like, I don't even know what that is. I mean, that for me was, again, something that in December 2015, when Donald Trump said, you know, Muslims should be banned, I was like, I don't think that's funny. This is really confusing. Why aren't we doing anything about it? Why isn't anybody taking this seriously? I had no connection to a large platform. I just thought, well, I'm Muslim. I can use satire to do something. Why is he so angry at Muslims? It's probably because he married a Muslim woman and has a daughter floating around there, and she broke up with him and broke his heart. Why do you think he built the Taj Mahal? For the love of a Muslim woman. That's all I'm saying. You know what I mean? And and we put that out there, and it was one of those things that for me got a lot of traction, where it wasn't quite about views, but I got written up in, I don't even know, like, you know, at least 20 really great spaces, whether it was Marie Claire or the AV Club or you know, NBC, whatever. Like, it just sort of created that. But I think it took every single other thing that I made to get to that point, which, you know, I know we're talking specifically digitally, but like, I guess that's also kind of our journey as anything we do, right? It's not just this one thing, it's everything you did before that. So I don't have that answer, but I think it's more than just how do you get people to watch it. I think there's so much more, and it's kind of like how do you change the world? How do you get 5 million views? That's a hard thing to focus on when you're a creator or have a dream. I think it can be a part of a 10-year or 20-year, a 10-year plan or a hope, but I don't know if that's all we can think about.
Yeah, just agreeing in the mic. I wonder, like, the thing about broadcast TV, obviously, like by its definition, is that they're looking for the broadest audience. They're looking for sort of the broadest stories. So there can be, even when you're looking at sort of diverse stories and a creative team and a production staff, the stories being told can sometimes lack specificity. That's precisely what, YouTube or Vimeo or any number of sort of online platforms allows you to do, but that also means that you kind of have to do it that way. Like, you can't really tell a YouTube web series with a diverse cast and diverse, like, creators, but then tell like a general story. Like, you sort of have to come at it, at least where it sort of hits, you have to come at it from your perspective. You think, not that you have to be like, oh, well, I'm a writer living in LA who's a first generation whatever. It doesn't have to be, that's not what your series has to be. You have to take those things and inform sort of what you're doing. Like, I'm a first generation American, but I don't speak any other languages, nor do I, so it would be sort of dishonest for me to sort of take something and be like, oh, I'm gonna tell this very like heartfelt story. I could bring other people in and start telling those stories, but if you're making something, it needs to sort of be specific, not to your entire world, but to your experience in order to hit. And again, not maybe with views and not maybe with like everything going, but something that just feels right on the YouTube space or in the digital space sort of has to have that specificity, or else it sort of flounders.
Well, and it seems like that's what it feels like, even in sort of like that broadcast space, that's what everyone wants now, right? I keep sitting on my foot because I'm so short. But people want, like, well, what's your story? Whatever that is real and right, and that's what people want to watch. And I know we've talked about this before. It's like, well, what am I going to write about? And it's like, well, write for people who exist. Write who you know. Like that, when I think about like, well, how do you be a writer? I'm like, I don't know. I just know this person who's so ridiculous and wonderful. And when I write, it's coming out of their mouth. And that is like the inspiration, because it's like they're saying it, and that's who I'm seeing, and the way they walk and move, and that's a fun, that nobody knows that character, that person, except for you,
As a specific example, I mean, most people know the show High Maintenance now that it's on HBO, but the co-creator of that show is a casting director, and she wrote those roles specifically for those actors, right? They didn't cast that series. She wrote every episode for an actor she wanted to showcase who they were and what their talent was, and I think it comes across in the series. And that series, I guess, went viral on Vimeo. It didn't go like YouTube viral. It's not like David After the Dentist or whatever that video is. But I think it didn't matter, right? Like, it was good storytelling, and I think as I complain about marketing, at the same time I've seen plenty of times shows that weren't very popular that managed to get a life or advance the career of a particular artist because it was sincere and artistic.
So I have a question about responsibility, to switch gears a little bit. And I'm just going to cite 2 examples that for me are also put me in the dilemma of, well, what is responsible? So one is La La Land, which I loved. I'm sure a lot of you saw it. And a friend had posted about La La Land and I know this is talking about a future film and we're talking about digital space, but I think it's all connected. And they wrote something on Facebook, and I said I loved it. Only note for it was I wish that it looked a little bit more like LA, because I've lived in LA for years, and I didn't think that the casting reflected the diversity, other than the Indian American woman in the yellow dress at the top of the number, at the top, the first musical number. And the person who responded said, well, I'm just interested in the story. Like, I think the story is what's important. And I agree with that. But I think it's interesting because then when you get to a movie like Moonlight or a movie that centers around a particular community, it's hard to get past race or sexuality. For example, Ava DuVernay talks about that she can never do an interview without people bringing up the fact that she's a female director, a black director. The other example I wanted to bring up is, you talk about casting, and if you have a South Asian character, should it be played by someone that's South Asian? I had a conversation with an actor about this, and he said, well, we're actors, we should be able to transform. This is why I became an actor. So if I'm Middle Eastern, I should be able to play other ethnicities. What do you think about these kind of things as it comes to responsibility in telling stories? What is responsible?
Oof. With casting, that's there's so much like muddy water that I won't get into, because I think maybe other people can sort of talk about it maybe a little bit cleaner. I think if you're making something, you sort of have to be ready to have that conversation. When Ava DuVernay says, like, I don't want to be talked about as a female director, I think she still knows that it's fine that those questions get asked, because it's still not the norm. I think what she's speaking to is the fact that she wants to get to a point where that's no longer part of the conversation, where we can just be in this space, but we're not there. So so when you tell a story that comes from a diverse point of view, you sort of have to be ready to answer people's questions, which, you don't have to have all the answers, but I think you have to be willing to start the conversation. It's because it's not, it's not the full representation of what's on TV. It's something people haven't seen before. People are going to have questions, and yeah, it's sort of like you shouldn't have to be the representation for every black person, every Indian person. It shouldn't have to be on your shoulders, but at the same time, you're the one they're asking. And you decided to make this piece. So there is a certain sense that you kind of have to be able to talk about it. You can say, I don't have all the answers, let me point you to some people who can talk about it, but you still have to sort of be ready for the conversation.
Fozzie, I see the wheels turning.
Casting. I think I feel a responsibility. I'm not going to tell anybody what they should do. I think there are things we can do, we could do, and there are things that I would like to hope that I continue to do. But I do feel a great responsibility, and part of that is because of why I started making anything, is that I want to be represented. And you know what? I have a friend who's my best friend in the world, and she's so awesome and lovely. She's one of those people who super hippy dippy, and I don't mean dippy, she's just hippie. I don't mean that in a bad way, because I'm a little hippie. But she's super hippie. She doesn't use Facebook. She probably doesn't even know what half the things we're talking about are. She's like, who is that? Who's Ava? What? She doesn't watch a lot of movies or TV shows. And for her, she's like, Boz, sometimes I wonder, you always want to compartmentalize yourself. And I get that. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter. But I think we live in the West. The West is a different place than both where we came from and where we maybe want to go. Right now, claiming who you are, I think feels really important. And it feels powerful. And I think it breaks stereotypes of what other people think is possible. And I had a meeting with somebody in Hollywood who's got a show that's being made, and there's a Muslim lesbian character in it. And she's writing this character, but she'd never met a Muslim lesbian before. And I'm just like, well, again, we exist. And so claiming it allows people to understand what's real. So that is why I feel like it matters. And so far as casting, so in my movie, for example, it's a Pakistani Muslim lesbian. She's got her mother that she's taking care of, who's obsessed with watching these Pakistani TV dramas. And the Pakistani character falls for this Mexican-American woman. And the Mexican woman, when we were casting for her in Chicago, it's all shot in Chicago, people are like, okay, well, we got to see all the Latinx community. And I'm like, why? Well, because we have the bigger pool of people to choose from. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to cast a Mexican character. I want to cast a Mexican person to play a Mexican character. You know what I mean? Why not? And there's amazing, amazing Mexican actors in the city of Chicago. And I would venture to say in many other cities if we chose to be so bold to make it that specific. Did it mean that 30,000 people were coming through the door? No, it meant that like, I don't know, we saw maybe 30 people, but like, they were all awesome. Every single one of those women, I looked at their headshots and I was like, thank you. I started talking to them, I was like, thank you for being so smart and bold and wonderful and being vulnerable in this audition. I wish I could cast you all. But by doing that, it made my movie better. You know, it made me be more true to my mission by wanting authenticity for myself. But then I feel a responsibility to the other communities. So I think it matters. I think it does. And if you have a role where you're like, well, it could be anybody. Well, why not cast somebody who like, I don't know, doesn't like looks different than Ryan Gosling. Like he's hot. We were born in the same town in Canada. But like, why not cast like, you know, somebody who's genderqueer or a burlesque dancer or somebody trans or somebody black or somebody who, I don't know, isn't on every single other television show that you see.
I have to say I like that you brought the Hollywood writer example because we talk about casting and what's on the screen, but like we have to talk about who's writing for the screen, who's directing, because you can't get diversity on screen without having it behind. It just doesn't happen. Like you look at Open TV's trailer, we have all the diversity in the world. I didn't set out to create all the diversity in the world. I just worked with people who were marginalized and wanted to like tell specific stories, and they wrote 4 characters who were like not in Hollywood, right? And they cast people who they knew who could like play the role sincerely. So I look at La La Land and it's like, well, look at who's behind the camera. You're not gonna see people of color on that screen. And I think about what that movie could have been if it actually had like the music that was actually in LA right now, right? Like if it had all the cultures represented as lead characters in that story, it would have been much more interesting. I didn't think La La Land was very interesting at all. I thought like, you know, what would that look like if Kalani did the soundtrack, you know? I mean, I don't know, I just feel like it seemed so retro to me, like 1950s LA, some kind of like mythic thing. I think the world is so interesting and complex and messy, and I think we need writers and directors who have funding to tell stories that reflect that.
I have a million more questions, but I want to open it up to all of you and get you guys, give you an opportunity to ask anything that's on your mind. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, thank you so much for speaking. This panel has been really wonderful and it's made me really happy. I think there's a tension that you guys talked about that's important about when you are trying to tell a universal story, but when people look at you, they see you as sort of an archetype potentially. And Christian, you brought up the idea of distribution. And my question is, when you're trying to position yourself with a distributor, I think frequently distributors are looking to fill maybe a gap of, you know, they want to look like they're being representational. And so when you're pitching a story, there may be this idea that you want to tell a story that's kind of universal, but they may want, if they look at me, they may want a story about like arranged marriage, which I know like literally nothing about, right? So, you know, on one hand, there's a sense that you want to have exposure and you want to be able to at least get your foot in the door, but you also want to make sure that the story you're telling is authentic to your truth, right? Is that a tension that you guys have had to deal with, and how do you navigate it? Because when it comes to distribution, right now we don't have a ton of choices, so there is sort of that sense of, can you just take that exposure where you get it?
Well, you know, I'm sort of a distributor myself.
Yeah, you have Open TV. No,
Yeah, because when you come to me, I'm not looking to fill a hole. I'm with you because you're an artist that I think is interesting, and I never tell my artists what they should do. I just say, do whatever you want, I'll help you make it. I think that's what distributors should be doing, because we're in an environment where people are connecting to specific voices, right? They're not connecting to some sort of marketed universal narrative or packaged narrative. I think people can sniff inauthenticity like real quick, you know? And the networked environment where content is being distributed decentralized, right? Not linear one-to-many. These distributors are gonna have to get hip to that or die, because they will be outmoded in this environment.
I also wanted to add something that I wanted to say earlier. I wanted to ask it as a question, but you know, Ava DuVernay talks about it's not about knocking on closed doors. It's about building our own houses and having our own doors, which is what I think Amar is doing with Open TV. And I hope that you'll take that away with you, because a lot of the times I feel like we are defining success by, oh, we got the story out on YouTube, it launched on YouTube. Even Awkward Black Girl started on YouTube, went to HBO. But I think that there's other ways to define success. To me, like Kim Kardashian living on YouTube, that is successful. She distributed it herself. And so I think that's a way to empower ourselves as storytellers to find, and the internet is the easiest, most accessible way to do that and not rely, I mean, you know, obviously have your goals and whatnot, but holding on to the fact that you are not only telling a story, but you are building a house and building on your own doors. You don't have to knock on closed doors at all.
Get together with your friends. If you're being pigeonholed, find your other friend who's being pigeonholed and release your stories together. You know, just start your own channel and build, you know, aggregate your audiences.
Yeah, I think, I forget what I was going to say now. I got so caught up in that answer. Let me think about it for a second. Oh, okay, great. So there are a lot of stories to be told, and I think TV is sort of moving towards a more open conversation, but they're moving in sort of the right way with the right percentages. So although change is happening, it's very glacial, because you're also working with the amount of TV that's already on the air, and a lot of that's super white. And so then you're sort of making these changes, but it's like working with, you know, so there's a world in which you will move towards equality. It's sort of that, like, do we want to change the system? Do we want to disrupt the system? Which is super hacky, but I think that's somewhat accurate. Like the thing that sort of online platforms provides is this opportunity to sort of make a show that's completely something. So you can have like 100% like the cast, the crew, the DP, the editor that sort of like tells that story in the way, and have like 100% diverse cast. And diversity is sort of broadly defined. I think the Writers Guild, it's basically anyone who's not a white dude under 50. So it's a white straight dude under 50. So it's a fairly broad range of diversity. So I think there's a lot of room in there. So tell the story, you know, we're just trying to, I think, create a world. And TV wants to be that. It's just, you're working against a system where, you know, it's mostly one type of person at the top. And so those decisions don't quite make it all the way. But I think it is changing, and there's this openness. I think Shonda Rhimes spoke to that as well. It's not like people want TV to be 100% white. It's not that they want just like two dudes telling jokes. We don't want to get back to a world where Seinfeld and Friends are the only thing on the air, even though Seinfeld and Friends are amazing, and I don't want to speak ill of it because they're like the best. But I think, you know, but you know, the change is happening, but it's slow. So, you know, I think that's what I wanted to speak to.
To give a specific example, you know, when we released Brown Girls last month, we released a trailer in the fall, and almost immediately Sam Bailey and Fatima Asghar started getting press reach outs, right? People wanted to write about the show. And almost all the press we had mentioned the fact that most of our cast and crew were women, people of color, and queer folks, right? Like, it was a selling point to audiences that that was the case, and that the fact that the cast of the show, there actually aren't any white people in the show. People really wanted something new and different, and when we launched that show, we launched it in over a dozen cities internationally. Like, fans just reached out and they wanted to screen the show in their cities for their friends, with their community. We were trending on Twitter that night. Like, it really just proved to me, like, people want intersectional stories. They're tired of the same thing. They're tired of their narratives being diluted by executives in Hollywood who frankly haven't left Hollywood, right, in like 10 years. More questions?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you guys so much. This is great. I'm from the University of Virginia, and I work with the Data Science Institute there, and we've got a group that's working on a project right now. They've noticed that the recruitment of women by ISIS on social media has been incredibly successful. And so we've got a group that's doing a textual analysis of social media to try and figure out what kind of tone, what kind of words, how those things are fitting together such that they are having that success with that community, and how we might be able to launch sort of a counterattack. So my question for you guys would be, once we gather the data, once we get that kind of information, how do we take something like that and be able to tell a story in a way to reach a particular kind of community and create a particular kind of tone?
Wow. How do we use
Which
data?
community do you want to reach? Which specific community?
Yeah. So it would be reaching out to that same community, that community
ISIS.
of women, and trying to sort of launch this counterattack so that instead of having women being swayed to ISIS, we instead are swaying them in a different way to see that ISIS is not the right way to go. So how do we take, like I said, the project is gathering the textual data to try and find out what the tone is, what kinds of words are being used, how those people are being successful in recruiting women, or why those people are being successful in recruiting women.
This is why I love the internet, and because think about what a specific community of people you're trying to reach right now. It's so specific. It's basically people that are being recruited for ISIS, and you're trying to basically redirect them to recruit them into something else, right? So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I
Yeah.
was gonna say, I mean, I don't know that answer, but hearing it, it just makes me think, I don't know until the data comes in.
Right.
You know, it's sort of like, well, what story am I gonna tell? I don't know the story until like, what's this script gonna look like? I don't know until I know, like, the characters and, you know, some of the theme, like, so it feels as though maybe there's something great, but until that data comes in, it's like, right now it feels like, I don't know how you figure that out. Feels like the first step is getting that.
Yeah.
I would say making it, I think releasing stuff, it sounds like a no-brainer, but hashtags are obviously so important because it's actually how you're filing away your content. And the other thing I want to say is I think your mind will be blown by who finds you. Because I think for me, the moment where I really realized the power of the internet is I was in a situation where I had to basically stay at my parents' house, and we had a house full of guests, and I was sharing the basement with my mom. Like, we just had a mattress. Like, every room was taken. We were sleeping in the basement, and every night before she went to bed, she would watch her Indian soap operas. And these soap operas have the lowest, Fazia, maybe you've seen some of these, the lowest production value. Like, they are ridiculous. The worst acting, and the amount of hits is insane. And people all over the world are watching them. And I kind of thought, like, I just had a mental note, like, why does nobody know that these are so popular? I mean, you guys Google this when you go home. And so it occurred to me too, actually, as we were pitching Geeta's Guide to like Sundance Labs and stuff, I had been interviewing the 3 aunties that you see that are kind of like the Greek chorus. I had interviewed them as part of this Sundance project for New Voices, and I learned from them that they watch nothing on network TV. They don't even turn on their televisions, but they watch a ton online. Everything they watch is online, and I think that what we're learning is that there are just so many audiences that are underestimated and undervalued online, and I think that you will release your content and people will find you.
And also, I feel like that's a classic example of, I bet the same things that are people are using to recruit women for ISIS are the same things that people use to recruit people to vote for Trump. It's the same thing that maybe like trolls on the internet who stalk female gamers, it's the same language. Like people who bully trans people on the internet. Like I imagine that there's other groups you could find that are literally, it's the same kind of tactics and language that's used. So that feels like something interesting to explore.
Yeah, I also think it might just point to people wanting to be seen and people to feel like they belong to something. And I think that's something that, like, if you're making work, if you're putting work out there, just know that for every person who's putting a web series online, there are like hundreds of people who want to see that story, see themselves reflected. I remember just weirdly, Tom Haverford on Parks and Recreation was like a big deal for me whenever he sort of came when Aziz Ansari was like on TV as like a culturally American Indian person, and just like what that meant and sort of what that process like, and it seems so simple, and obviously the writing staff may not have been as diverse as anything, but he got to infuse that character with himself. He got to sort of create the role that he, along with the writer's room. And I don't want to downgrade the importance of a really strong writer's room, but that sense of belonging, I think, is so important. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one. It's not like I watched The Awkward Black Girl and I felt like there was like so much connectivity there, and I am none of those things. Well, I'm a little awkward, but I'm not. But there's a sense of just, again, I don't want to hammer it too hard, but there's that like specificity that the internet provides that can create these sort of universal stories. And again, that's like the oldest like bumper sticker of television, but it's totally true. Like, you tell the story and it like breathes these universal truths into it, and you feel like someone's talking to you and someone feels like, oh, I belong, I'm a part of this. And I think that's something that TV can provide, but without getting too like, I don't want to like exhume the dead bodies of you're the storytellers. That was my Viola Davis impression. That was really bad.
I just want to say really briefly that the internet can do a lot of things, but it also can't like cure geopolitical, political economic inequalities and disparities. So I think things happen in culture because there's things outside of media, right, that are affecting their lives.
Any other questions? Yeah, go for it.
Stacy, and I work for a public library system just north of Denver, and a big part of what we're focusing on now is how we support the creativity of the folks in our community. So I was wondering if you had any advice of things that we should be thinking about to continue to do that and support diverse voices as well.
As an educator, you said?
Yeah, it's a public library.
Yeah, ask around, ask your friends. I mean, I teach television, I teach creative industries broadly, and I don't put race, gender, sexuality in the title of my classes. I just integrate it throughout, because I think you can't understand the history of music without understanding like Black cultural production. Like, we invented most of the genres that are popular today. So I think just like making sure that everything you teach has just as much kind of difference within it is critical. And you might not be able to handle all the things that come up, right? But just sort of allowing people to sit with it at the very least. Collaborate, bring in other kinds of voices, professors, artists. Artists are incredibly knowledgeable about a whole range of things. And to do that, you might have to go out into your community and just see who's around, who can like support you. Lean on as much other people as you can, I think, because you can't do it alone. Some things to think about.
I would say mentorship too. I don't know, where did you go? Okay. Yeah, I wanted to look into your eyes. Mentorship, and I don't know, I know Fazia, you hit on this. It's like everybody wants to change the world, and I do too. And I think something's happened to me in the last year in particular since this election that I've started to realize that like there's so much power in doing that on a microscopic level. In your daily life, in your daily actions, in your own, on your street, and being mindful of that. And the other thing, just to keep it specific, that I really try to do, I try to mentor people, especially if they come to me. I'm not going to assume people that want my mentorship, but when people come to me for mentorship, I really make an effort to try to make the time and space for that. And when it comes to the projects, like our web series, I make a really big effort for people that don't have experience that want to get involved to involve them, because I came from a community. I remember saying to my mom when I was younger, I want to work in film, and she just said, like, everybody wants to be a movie star. And I think it's easy when you come from an underrepresented community, or especially being a child of immigrants, it's like your parents came here to like have the American dream, and all of this is a luxury. It's a luxury to be able to do this kind of work. When you're able to get past basic survival, this is a luxury. And so I try to remember that like the opportunity, what we're talking about that creates equality, I try to give that to opportunity to other people, because so many people don't come from a background where they even have access to South by Southwest, access to a camera, access to the internet, access to working on a film production. And that's how we can encourage underrepresented stories to get out there, and communities, all communities, to get stronger.
I mean, that's a fun idea, right? Like, you know, like using the library space that you have. It's such a great gathering place in a community, such an important gathering place in a community too. Like, you know, doing like a class, or we're gonna make a movie, or we're gonna make digital videos today, and we're gonna have a teacher, you know, someone who has equipment to volunteer their time to come in, and we're gonna do it once a week, or we're gonna do a 6-week class, or whatever it is to start. But what a great way to give some people who would maybe not know how, whether they you know, maybe they have the access but they're scared, maybe they don't have the access, and then you provide that. I mean, that feels like a really empowering thing.
And people learn by doing, so if you just let them do it, they'll
Yeah.
learn something.
That's how I became a lesbian.
That's how we all.
Any other questions? No? Okay, and we're at time. I just want to thank you. Such a graceful conclusion. I just want to thank all of you guys for coming again. I want to invite all of you to connect with everybody here after the panel, online, in person at the festival, and connect with one another, and just keep this conversation going and alive, because it's kind of an endless conversation that can continue to contribute to our communities growing and evolving. And I will just want to end with the thought that diversity is really about our common humanity and our true oneness. We are all one, and thank you for being here today.